The Infinity Saga contained 23 movies that came out over the span of 11 years. But Phase 4 already contains 18 projects that came out in barely 2 years. As said before, that's a lot of content. And the main reason for that was the introduction of Disney Plus. Disney has now its very own and quite successful, I might add, streaming service. And that streaming service needs original content. And Marvel has provided that in plenty with live action shows, animated shows, and even some specials. But as stated, it was a lot in a very short amount of time. So, my question to the champions is that a good thing? Or has it hurt the quality of the content? And is it now harder to fully keep up today with all those things happening in the MCU? And well, basically, how do we feel about that expansion to TV and even animation? And I would like to give the first word to Taylor.
Yeah, this is a huge part of Phase 4, and it's a huge part of everything going forward. They're still finding their way. Disney is still finding a way. Disney Plus is still finding a way. Streaming in general is still finding its way. It's extremely new frontier for entertainment. It's a whole new ball game in a way. So there's going to be growing pains, and it's going to continue to change. Nothing is static. Okay, television, just television in general as a mass medium, has only been around for 70 years, let's say 52 to 2022, and it's changed multiple times. And again, that sounds like a long time, but when you think about it, The Simpsons has been on for almost half of the entire history of television. But my point being, no one really knows how to do streaming yet. It's trial and error to a point. Is there too much stuff on streaming? Is there stuff that should be in a movie and not on streaming? Is there movies that should go straight to streaming? Who knows? Marvel, of course, was given a task: make us money from Disney. Okay, and I think overall they've done a good job. Like Lord Deathman said, most of the TV shows have been very good. I do want to mention that Loki also had some multiverse stuff in it, but I think most of the TV shows have been very good. I think, like I said, to a degree, they're integrating them with the movies to a greater degree than has ever been tried before. The What If? I know a lot of people loved What If. I liked a lot of the individual episodes of What If. I didn't like that they connected them all and had a big mini endgame season finale of What If and made it a little mini multiverse saga right there in that one season of What If. I thought that was going a little bit too far. For my taste, I would have preferred it to be more like the comics, where they were just one-off anthology stories just for the fun of it. But like I said, most of them in and of themselves were pretty good. As you mentioned, so many projects though in such a short time, and so many new characters. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but they've introduced something like 20 plus significant characters from the comics just in Phase 4, as opposed to like the 9 plus Nick Fury that we had in Phase 1, or the 6 plus Nick Fury that we had in Phase 1. And it's huge. And like Lord Deathman was getting at, these are characters no one's ever heard of. And the comics, I'll go back to the comics. The Avengers from Phase 1 and Phase 2, they've been in the comics forever. They have massive runs. They have run multiple runs. They have, they're known. Like Lord Deathman said, they're relatively known. Shang-Chi was created in the 1970s because Bruce Lee had a popular movie and there was a kung fu show on TV. So they said, let's make a character who does kung fu. Captain Marvel, who's, I am assuming is going to be one of the main characters going forward, to the best of my knowledge, has never had a really successful comics run in any iteration that they've tried. Now, that doesn't mean she can't be extremely successful in the movies. She may be. I love the first Captain Marvel movie. But then they've added in, like Moon Knight. And okay, you've added in Moon Knight, but what the heck does Moon Knight have to do with the multiverse saga? And it's okay to have side stories within the universe that aren't directly linked to the main plot going on. That's okay if you're going to have this much product, but tell us that. Let us know up front that we shouldn't be looking for Moon Knight in the next movie, because in Phase 1, like with the end credit scenes almost in Phase 1, Phase 2 almost always led directly to the next movie. Now we've had a bunch of end credit scenes that have led absolutely nowhere so far. I mean, when are we going to see Charlize Theron again? We have to wait for another 7 years for Doctor Strange 3 before we see a payoff for that. Whereas end of Iron Man, we get the Avengers in the end credit scene. End of Iron Man 2, we get the Thor's hammer in the end credit scene. Then comes Thor. End of Thor, Captain America's shield in the end credit scene. Then comes Captain America. And then in Phase 2 and Phase 3, Infinity Stones, Thanos, all that was always in the end credit scenes. The end credit of Falcon and Winter Soldier, or end credit of Ant-Man was a scene from Civil War, which was like the next movie, and so on. It was very well scheduled, and the end credit scenes were very well planned and very well timed out. Sometimes they didn't even have anything to do with the movie that they had done, but they were about the next movie, the very next movie, or maybe there was a Guardians of the Galaxy in between, but the next movie on Earth, set. Okay. Whereas now we've had a whole bunch of great end credit scenes, but none of them, we don't know where any of them are going. Black Knight and the guy with the sword,
Blade.
Vampire Killer, Blade. Thank you, Black Knight and Blade in an end credit scene for Eternals. Eternals themselves. When are we going to get when's Eternals 2 going to happen? It's not even on the radar as of this point, and they left us with a huge cliffhanger and an introduction of more awesome characters that maybe we'll never see again. When are we going to? Well, I mean, I hope we see him again too.
Harry Styles.
But that's just it. But there's just so many characters. What are they going to do with them all? Who are the Avengers right now? I don't even know which ones are the Avengers. Shang-Chi. Shang-Chi was a great movie. It was very early in this phase. We haven't heard a word from Shang-Chi since then, in any credit scene or in anything else. Captain Marvel was supposed to be, at the end of the Infinity Saga, she was supposed to be one of the main characters. And other than a couple of end credit scenes, we haven't seen her at all in Phase 4, a whole phase without their, who we thought was going to be their main, their main character. So again, there's so many, and again, there's the reason why Captain America, Iron Man, Thor, Hulk, Black Widow. There's a reason why these characters are the core and why they've lasted so long in the comics. It's easy to make a superhero character. Making a great superhero character that stands the test of time is really, really hard. Okay? That's why Hollywood keeps going back to Batman and Superman, the Trinity, and Spider-Man. It's easy to make a guy and give him superpowers. Yeah, this is cool. We don't need Iron Man anymore, or we don't. We've done Iron Man so long, so many stories of him. Let's have Tony Stark retire and replace him with a teenager in a tin suit. People will love that. No, they won't. Okay, people aren't going to love a teenager in a tin suit pretending to be Iron Man. Okay, which is why the comic sales dropped into the basement in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, because they tried to reboot all the old characters with new characters with the same powers, or new characters with different powers that are just freaking lame, because there's only so many superpowers that are actually cool. All right, and are actually cinematic. All right, Professor X touching his temple, not cinematic. Okay. And that's just an example. There's lots of other weird powers out there. But, there's a reason why the comics always go back to Tony Stark, Peter Parker. There's a million different Hulks out there, but they always go back to Bruce Banner eventually, okay? Because those are great characters. They're great superheroes. Wanda is another one that they always go back to. Doctor Strange. These are the ones that have some longevity to them. And now they're trying to continue the saga, or continue the MCU, I should say, with a new saga with a lot of new characters. And some of them may end up being great movie characters, but the audience also has to get used to them. And again, if we're not seeing them except once every 4 or 5 years, it's going to be hard to build that fan base for that character. I'm getting a little bit off track. Also on the streaming, I love the specials. I think they've done a fantastic job with the specials, and I love that they have their own Marvel special logo, which is so reminiscent of the broadcast network logos for specials that they all had when I was a kid growing up. And when I saw those, I was like, yes, I'm getting a Christmas special. I'm going to see Snoopy or Rudolph or something when I saw that special come on, that little special logo. And now Marvel has its own one, which is just perfect. I thought Werewolf by Night was fantastic. The Guardians of the Galaxy Christmas special, for what they were trying to do, for the type of Christmas special they were trying to do, they did a great job. It was very entertaining. It's not the kind of Christmas special I prefer myself, but that's just a personal opinion. They did a great job, and it was very entertaining. So again, I just think the addition of the streaming just adds such a complication. And then it's not even the only complication that's been added. They've also acquired X-Men and Fantastic Four. And, we got the Netflix characters back. And they're trying to figure out what to do with all of this stuff as quickly as possible. And it might just, is there such a thing as too much of a good thing? I think we're going to find out sooner or later here in the MCU if there is such a thing as too much of a good thing.
Lord Deathman, is there too much of a good thing?
Sadly, I think you can have too much ice cream on an empty stomach. I have to say up front as a disclaimer, you could make 1 billion of these TV shows and I would be there to watch every single minute of every one that came out. But I'm realizing, just looking at my fellow fans, looking at their attitudes, reading what they've written on forums, talking to them in real conversations, I have to admit it is possible to have too much of a good thing. And, let's talk about why just for a couple of minutes here. I know that the Marvel IP has to be the strongest IP in the history of movies. Maybe Star Wars comes close. Maybe if you look at the numbers, you're not really going to find anything that really popped, that had the impact and it was as popular as Marvel. So when the mandate came down from Chapek and Iger and company, this is strong. I need you to do it like 100 more times, please, and on TV, right? These are corporate mandates. Expand the IP, do more. We have a streaming service that's coming up and it needs to be successful. We need to have as many subscribers to it as possible. But the biggest problem with introducing so many shows at the same time is that things get diluted. And there's no question about that. The saga of the Eternals, just on its own, the types of questions that Jack Kirby was trying to ask, the level of, again, sophistication in speculative fiction that Jack and Stan were trying to build. I'm sorry, that was just Jack Kirby Eternals. Stan wasn't involved. That could have been something that in and of itself took up a whole phase. But now it's like, okay, we got to tell their story. And now we're jumping to the next character on TV. And then, had 6 episodes of that. And now it's time to get to the next episode. So before you even get to build a relationship or a connection to a particular property, it felt like we were just moving on to the next character. There's also the way that fans were trained to interact during the first phase with all of the movies and properties. It felt like you absolutely had to watch the next movie because something was going to unfold in terms of the Infinity Saga. I can't miss one because Thanos is going to make a move, Nebula is going to do this, so-and-so, so-and-so. And that training, unfortunately, we took that into phase 4, where people just didn't feel like they could miss a show, but yet there were just so many shows coming out. And that caused fatigue, that caused feelings of things being diluted. And I think there should have been some signaling from the Marvel team that you could do this a la carte. You don't have to watch Moon Knight. We're still going to take your $7 for the month while you're subscribed if you don't watch Moon Knight. But everybody just felt like, oh my God, I'm teetering on the edge of this cliff every time I miss something. I'm not going to be a part of the conversation. But their strategy is based around something for everyone. So if Falcon and Winter Soldier is not that corner of the universe you want to see, then watch WandaVision. If you're into something that's more serious, a little bit more mysterious, Moon Knight. You don't really have to do, you have to take your cues from comic book collectors. There's no comic book collector I've ever met in my whole life that collected every single title at the same time as it was coming out, that Marvel was publishing. And you have to use the same common sense of a comic book collector and apply it to the way they were coming out with the television series. But there was no signaling from that, because it wouldn't have been to their benefit. It's like, no, we want you to watch everything, not realizing that flooding the market would really cause fatigue and some dilution in the product. But that's how I feel about the introduction of all these TV shows. I do think it was a bit too much. There's some people who've sworn off the streaming altogether. Some people who don't even believe in the streaming model as a way to consume content. I would never pay someone X amount of dollars a month for a subscription to something I don't own or whatever have you, what the arguments are. I'd rather buy a Blu-ray or DVD. You left those people at the gate. They're not even watching these things and they're feeling resentment because things are happening in those series that are supposed to be impacting the main saga. So I also want to say lots of empathy for those fans. I don't understand your position, but I certainly respect that, you feel that way and don't want to engage on that level. A few quick notes about Taylor's going through Taylor's commentary. One, you're absolutely right about Captain Marvel. I don't think he or she has ever had a successful comic book run. And the most famous thing, the thing that everyone knows Captain Marvel from in the comic books is dying. That's like the most impactful thing that Captain Marvel ever did for the comic book world. And you're absolutely right about touching your temples not being a dramatic power set to show, but I have to stand tall for Patrick Stewart, who never did much temple touching. That was McAvoy who brought all that
Yes.
temple touching to the table. And I love the way Patrick Stewart would go into this kind of light auto hypnotic trance to convey that he was, extending his mental powers outward. I thought he did that very convincingly. So just wanted to comment on Taylor's excellent commentary on a variety of different topics, but those two stood out to me.
Well, I'm moving on to Loki's mom. Loki's mom. In your opinion, has the sheer quantity of projects hurt the quality of the projects? Was Marvel Studios spread too thin?
Yes, I would say that it definitely has. I mean, Taylor and Lord Deathman brought out all the, I think, points that I would make myself. Just way too much. A lot of it, like you say, fresh characters that haven't been followed up with. Um, we get all these weird end credit scenes, which apparently they're very important. We have to sit through the credits to catch them, and but then there's no follow up to it. I mean, I'm still confused about the Julia Louis Dreyfus character. She's appeared in both the movies in credits and in the movies, I guess, with Black Panther 2, and then also in the series, she keeps popping up. And so I guess maybe she'll be explained a little bit later on. But yeah, just way too much. And yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think uh, Lord Deathman brought out that all this stuff that came in within 2 years. I mean, 24 months. It caused an anxiety that we got. Oh, I got to see this. I got to see that. I'm going to miss something because that's going to be important for them. And it's really, where is this? Where is it going? We know it's going multiverse. Um, some of the TV shows have touched on it. Others have not at all. Have just totally ignored it. Likewise with the movies, Shang-Chi, I don't think really had anything to do with it. Yet then we have Spider-Man comes out, and then that seems to where it starts to go wrong on Earth. But then in the Loki series, apparently it's starting to go wrong there. But anyway, we'll figure that out later on. Anyway, yeah, I mean, just absolutely, I think it's harmed it. And yeah, I've seen it with the quality of the characters. It was pointing out how rich the characters they were. They all got, at least Iron Man and Captain America and Thor. They all sort of got their first solo movies. I mean, we really got to know those characters before we really got to the meat and potatoes of the Avengers, the Thanos. He starts coming into the picture more and more. Yeah, so it's a lot of it's been rushed. Um, Taylor pointed out that they started out with, or maybe it was Lord Deathman pointed out that they started out with Black Widow, and I think that was kind of like you say, it was like a big hole there. We know she's dead. We know Natasha's gone. I guess it was a good movie, very good entertaining movie, but it served more, I think, just to introduce Yelena. And then I guess since David Harbour's coming back, the Red Guardian, they're great characters, so I hope they come back, and we're looking forward to that. But yeah, I can't add too much to what Taylor and Lord Deathman's already said. It's just to me that was where they've had a lot of problems trying to connect the movies and the TV series and and doing it so fast in such a short amount of time. I think's really harmed it. And it really starts to show up here toward the end. Like you say, it seemed like for the films that most of the fans are having problems with are the ones that are coming toward the end, like Thor, Moon Knight, and also She-Hulk and stuff like that. And it's just, like I said, people are getting fatigued.
Okay. Thank you for your excellent comments, as always. Before I move to you, Merv, Taylor had a follow-up.
Yeah, real quick. I, for one, am very glad that Black Widow movie was released when it was, because if they had done it earlier, they may not have gotten Florence Pugh to play Yelena, and I would be upset about that because she is fantastic.
Yeah, nobody can argue that. Merv, as I mentioned in my introduction of this topic, the MCU has decided to extend even into animation and its canon, as we have established. How do you feel about that? And give your overall opinion on this topic.
It's just a lot to take in, it's a daunting task for somebody who has maybe skipped 3 months to come back and say, I want to be on the same page as whoever is watching this next movie. It's a hard thing to do now because there's just so much out there. And whether lots of content, getting it real fast is a good thing or a bad thing is kind of it's a question in hindsight now. If every TV show felt like Breaking Bad, would we have a different perspective? I think we probably would. If every movie was The Godfather 2, we definitely have a different viewpoint of Phase 4 at this point. But I think because so many of the products have felt short of the mark or irrelevant to each other, or just, it's the growing pains in a lot of them for learning new characters. And this isn't the Marvel I knew, you know what I mean? So it in hindsight, yeah, I do think so much content, it really just oversaturated things, and it feels like the classic case of quantity over quality. But I mean, you don't know that necessarily going in. I mean, maybe they do. I don't know. But the other thing that kind of does happen is, everyone's touched on this already, but the frequency of it makes it so that you don't have time to get excited anymore. There's with 4 movies a year and 4 TV shows a year, like there's always a Marvel thing happening. So you don't live without it to want it again. And I mean, unless you detach yourself and then come back into it, which is a good idea. I definitely recommend it. But whenever you have a chance to be away from something, you want it again, if it's something you like in the first place. And I just don't think, like, with this Phase 4's schedule, it allowed for the want and desire for a lot of fans to come back to it. And I think that's whenever in hindsight you look back and you're like, well, maybe I should have just stopped at Endgame and not even bothered with a couple of the, and I know a lot of people personally who were just, it adds to the fatigue. It's like, I can't care. There's too many things to care about. Give me the one movie, 2 movies a year. Give me the anticipation and the payoff. It's kind of a double-edged sword because as fans, you want more content, but you don't want, I guess it's a fine line. You don't want too much because then you just feel bogged down by it. Or like, the worst thing to happen if it feels like a chore to watch these shows or to go to a movie. You don't want it to feel like a chore. It wants to be a reward.
Yeah, imagine having to watch it every week because you have to review it in the weekend.
Right. I mean, if I would have had to finish Miss Marvel today, I would have been so frustrated. But no, I do think it feels in hindsight like quantity over quality. And I do think it's a hindsight issue, and hopefully they can address it for Phase 5, and they don't, ruin the MCU as we know it.
Yeah, I saw a tweet somewhere that indeed there's internal discussion about Phase 5 and Phase 6 within Marvel Studios to see if they need to spread it out a little bit more or thin it out. I think Bob Iger is already noticing what the fans have been saying and taking action, I hope. But actually, that's our next topic. So let's park that for now. Loki's mom, you had a follow-up.
Yeah, talking about the quantity over quality, we have to also consider that because they have so much product coming out now, they've spread their staff, as it were, thinner. They've had to hire on new people, the showrunners, everything all these things that have to go in, artists. The money is spread out thinner. So, I mean, this is impacting the quality that was not impacting it when they were able to do just unit, packets every so many months. They were able to put out, a product. Before, they only had like maybe 2 or 3 units working at a time. Now they got 5, 6, or 7 units. Anyway, that's all I want to say.
Yeah, and of course, if you have so many units, the guy overseeing it all has a lot more work to do as well. And well, maybe he misses the mark at some points as well. That will conclude this particular discussion.